Transported to a new world, Lin Jiu awakens the heaven rewards the diligent system, a power that transforms his sweat into progress. Every technique he learns appears in his status window, and every drop of effort generates origin force to accelerate his cultivation. Starting from the bottom, his path combines relentless training with strategic growth. The system doesn't grant him power for free, but ensures his dedication always pays off as he climbs the ranks of the martial world. This is the story of a man using every advantage to forge his own path. The autumn air was crisp and refreshing, with gentle winds and radiant sunshine. Jiangyan Prefecture was located in the southern region of Great Wei and enjoyed a warm climate, slightly milder than the other prefectures. Even with winter approaching, many people on the streets were still dressed in short sleeves and shorts. It was afternoon, and pedestrians bustled through the lively streets of Somi City. Among them, Baiwei Street stood out as one of the most bustling districts in Somi City. It featured delicacies from all over Great Wei, said to offer 100 flavors of the world, hence the name Baiwei Street. 1. Thunderous applause erupted inside the Jade Pill Tea House. Good. Brilliant. On the storytelling stage, a young scholar spoke with rhythmic grace. The night was dark, and all was silent. Ning Kaichen was just about to fall asleep when he felt someone enter his room. He quickly sat up, and to his surprise, it was the pretty young lady from the northern courtyard. If he remembered correctly, her name was Little Qian. Ning Kaichen asked in surprise, "Miss, what brings you to my room?" Little Qian gave a charming smile. The young scholar continued his storytelling until he ended the session with a sudden, crisp slap on the table. "Huh," he said. "To know what happens next, join us next time." "Ah, that's it. You can't be serious. It just got exciting. Young sir, give us one more segment." It's still early. The guests in the tea house all voiced their disappointment, clearly unsatisfied. Behind the storytelling desk stood a teenage scholar, about 16 or 17 years old. He had decent facial features, though his skin was a bit tanned and his frame rather lean. Dressed in a plain green scholar's robe, he carried the spirited aura of a young intellectual. No, I can't go on. My throat won't hold out," Lin Jiu said, waving his hand. After speaking for over an hour, his voice was a little hoarse and his throat was nearly at its limit. The guests still continued to complain in disappointment. "What am I going to do now? I won't be able to sleep tonight." "Young sir, you're too cruel," stopping right at the good part. Amid the guests' reluctant calls, the young man cupped his hands in salute and stepped down from the stage. "You're truly gifted, young sir. To be able to craft such a vivid and tantalizing story, even someone my age can't help but be drawn in," the tea house manager said with a smile. The manager was named Wu Yinghe, and he was a portly middle-aged man who always wore a smile like the laughing Buddha. "You flatter me. I'm just trying to earn a meal," said Lin Jiu, waving modestly and accepting the coins the manager handed him. "These 138.12 are from the guests' tips, and these 101 are today's wages. You worked hard today, so I raised your pay a little," Wu Yinghe said with a grin. A little over 10 days ago, Lin Jiu had volunteered to tell stories, even saying he would work for free if he wasn't any good. At first, Wu Yinghe had been hesitant. After all, Lin Jiu was far too young and lacked life experience. He didn't seem like someone who could tell stories well. But being a kind-hearted man, and seeing how pitiful yet well-mannered the boy was, he decided to give him a chance. If Lin Jiu wasn't good, he simply wouldn't be paid. Unexpectedly, while the young man's storytelling technique was average, the stories themselves were astonishingly engaging. Since Lin Jiu began telling stories here, more and more customers had been coming just to hear his tales. Business at the tea house had been booming ever since. "Thank you, manager," Lin Jiu said gratefully. He left the tea house and walked along Baiwei Street. The street was lined with an array of delicacies, their tempting aromas stirring Lin Jiu's appetite. It had been over a month since he arrived in this world, and he had gradually adapted to life here. Thinking back to the miserable days right after his arrival, Lin Jiu still felt a lingering fear. The city where the old Lin Jinyu lived had been overrun by rebel forces. Their family, once wealthy merchants in Jinan City, had gotten wind of the danger early and fled together. But even so, they could not escape misfortune. On their way to the Central Plains, they were ambushed by bandits, and Lin Jinyu was separated from his parents and relatives. After many days of wandering and drifting among the refugees, he finally arrived at Songi City. Not long after arriving, he succumbed to exhaustion, and this Lin Jiyu took over the body. At that point, Lin Jiyu's stomach was full of dirt, bark, and weeds. He was so constipated he couldn't relieve himself for days. It wasn't until he drank some dirty water and got diarrhea that things finally improved. But it had nearly cost him his life. I really must thank Lady Ren. If not for her porridge, I probably would have died again right after reincarnating, Lin Jiyu said with an emotional sigh. The Ren family was a renowned high-ranking family in Songi City, and Ren Qingying was not only beautiful but also kind-hearted. She was a living bodhisattva, 3, in the eyes of many refugees. If she hadn't repeatedly offered porridge outside the city, Lin Jiyu surely wouldn't have survived. As he walked down the street, Lin Jiyu sniffed the air, and his stomach rumbled in response. "Smells amazing," he exclaimed. He reached into his pocket and resisted the urge to spend. He had just saved up a little money and couldn't afford to squander it. In this world, aside from storytelling, Lin Jiyu hadn't found any good ways to earn a living. Originally, he had grand ambitions to use his knowledge and ideas from his past life to make a name for himself in this world. But reality's harshness quickly woke him from that dream. After several attempts, Lin Jiyu realized he wasn't good at anything. Fortunately, in his past life, he had loved listening to Master Gui's storytelling. Through constant exposure, he had picked up some basic skills. In the end, relying on the stories from his previous life, he managed to land a job as a storyteller. While his storytelling skills were just average, his facial expressions and emotional delivery were excellent, and the stories themselves were outstanding. All in all, he did a decent job and managed to earn a living. "I've managed to save a little more than 1 tael, 4 of silver. I wonder if that's enough to learn a martial art. The world is in chaos. Without a clan or kin by my side, it's far too easy to be bullied," muttered Lin Jiyu. Lin Jiyu tightened his grip on the silver in his pocket. He had already been robbed several times. Without any relatives or backing, he had suffered greatly since arriving in this world. And even if he reported it to the authorities, the magistrate's office was swamped with other matters. Who would care about something as minor as Lin Jiyu's troubles? Fortunately, in these chaotic times, he did have something to rely on. Lin Jiyu glanced at the data that existed within his consciousness. It was something that had appeared the moment he arrived in this world. Heaven rewards the diligent. Name: Lin Jiyu. Origin force: 1 skills. This had appeared in his mind after arriving in this world. As long as he trained hard and pushed his body beyond its limits, he could gain 1 unit of origin force each time. He could then use origin force to enhance skills. A few days ago, he had tried to gain origin force by pushing himself past his physical limit. But all it resulted in was his entire body aching for a full week before recovering. Regular exercise doesn't count as a skill. I wonder if the martial arts of this world qualify, Lin Jiyu thought to himself. The martial prowess in this world was formidable. Before Junan City had been overrun by rebel forces, the old Lin Jiyu's family had employed many martial artists. Some of them were so powerful that they could easily fight 10 men alone. Unfortunately, the man himself had been a frail scholar, focused solely on passing the imperial exams, and had never learned a single martial technique. Lin Jiyu passed through Byway Street. After walking a few more kilometers, crossing a plaza, and turning through various streets and alleys, he arrived at the rundown Baishan district. It was far from the core of Songi City and was part of the outer city where only the poor resided. When he first arrived, Lin Jiyu had no money, so he could only rent a small hut here as a temporary shelter. Fortunately, his storytelling had gradually gained traction, and he had saved up a fair amount of silver. It was about time he moved into the inner city. "This smells awful," said Lin Jiyu, pinching his nose. He was unable to tolerate the stench of the Baishan district. The reek of sweat, urine, feces, and rotting garbage all mingled together into a foul, nauseating stench. Lin Jiyu entered Baishan district. Most people wore ragged clothes and looked sallow and thin. Songi City was relatively stable, but most commoners were impoverished and barely scraping by. Dressed in clean robes, Lin Jiyu stood out in stark contrast to his surroundings. As evening approached, many people were returning from work. Lin Jiyu saw scattered pedestrians, and their gazes toward him were tinged with suspicion. I've been watching that kid for a few days now. His face is looking better. Bet he's gained something in the city, muttered a skinny, monkey-like man to his companions nearby. The four of them were sitting on roadside stones, chatting idly while watching passers-by. I know him. He's a refugee who came a while ago. A scholar type, so they let him work in the city. Heard he's from a wealthy family in Jinan City, but the city was taken by rebel forces and he became a refugee. Another companion curled his lips disdainfully. What money could a refugee have? I snuck into his rental place a few days ago, and there was nothing there. Probably got robbed clean on the road. When it came to people like him who were alone and with no allies, these thugs were usually quite bold. As long as no one died, the authorities usually didn't pursue such matters. Even if someone was killed, without anyone to speak up for the victim, the crime might be completely ignored. From a distance, Lin Jiu spotted the four and muttered to himself in annoyance. "Tsh, what bad luck." Those men were local thugs, idle all day, doing nothing but petty theft and bullying the weak. He took a detour, deliberately avoiding them as his frail body couldn't afford any rough treatment. The four of them lit up at the sight. Well, that kid's acting guilty, and he's avoiding us. Might have something good on him. Come on, let's go take a look, said the biggest man of the group. His name was Gao Yu. He was 1.83 meters tall, twice the size of Lin Jiu, and was the kind of person who enjoyed bullying cowardly types with fear in their eyes and no one to back them up. Hey kid, stop right there. What are you hiding from? Gao Yu shouted at Lin Jiu from afar. Lin Jiu stopped helplessly and thought, is avoiding them not even an option? Been seeing you head into the city a lot these days. Got some lucky break or something? Why not help your brothers out a bit? Gao Yu chuckled. His eyes roamed up and down Lin Jiu's body. There's no such luck. You all know how hard it is to find work these days. I was hoping to get some food in the city, so I learned a bit of storytelling. But I'm not good enough and business is quiet, said Lin Jiu, giving a bitter smile. You? A storyteller? Ha! The group couldn't help but burst into laughter. The skinny monkey-like one kept eyeing Lin Jiu, then suddenly snatched the bag from his hand. TSK, looks like you did earn a bit. Even bought yourself meat. Huh, said the skinny one while clicking his tongue and grinning. It was a tiny piece of meat with a few streaks of fat running through it. I've been weak lately, so I gritted my teeth and bought this small piece of meat. It's all I have, said Lin Jiu, revealing his empty pockets. After being robbed last time, he had divided his money into several parts and hidden them in various concealed spots along the way. He was like a cunning rabbit with 3 burrows. Even if one stash was found, there were still others hidden elsewhere. The thugs looked at the skinny Lin Jiu and felt he truly didn't look like someone with money. All right, off you go. Next time you see us, come say hello, got it, said Gao Yu, waving him off. Yes, I understand, Lin Jiu replied and didn't even bring up the meat. The situation was stronger than the man. With no family or friends to rely on, he'd just get beaten for nothing. He exhaled deeply, swallowing the bitterness in his heart. The king of hell may be easy to talk to, but the little devils are hard to deal with. When the situation is against you, lying low and developing quietly is the only way. I'll move first thing tomorrow. Rent in the city is higher, but at least it's safer there. The inner city's order was far better than the outer slums, with big and small gangs and constables keeping things in line. Thugs didn't dare act out there because if they were caught, they would get beaten bloody. Lin Jiu's stomach started growling just as he got back home. His meat had been stolen tonight, so he could only make do with thin porridge. Lin Jiu asked his next-door auntie for some pickled vegetables and downed 5 large bowls of porridge. He was still recovering physically and needed to stay nourished. The next morning, Lin Jiu got up early. He explained the situation to the landlord, picked up his small bundle, and left. He didn't have much to pack. Not long after, he arrived at the Jade Pill Tea House. Good morning, Manager Wu. Early in the morning, the tea house was quiet. Huh? Why are you here so early today? Wu Yinghe asked curiously. Well, I'm planning to move. The outer city is too chaotic, and living in Baishan district is just unbearable. Lin Jiu pointed at his bundle and asked, Manager Wu, do you have any recommendations? Baishan district really isn't suitable for living. Manager Wu nodded and thought for a moment before saying, I know a few brokers who handle rentals. The prices are quite reasonable. Then I'll trouble you, Manager Wu, Lin Jiu said with a smile. No need to be so polite, Manager Wu replied with a smile. Right now, Lin Jiyu was his god of wealth. He gave some instructions to the staff, then personally took Lin Jiyu to look for a place. With Manager Wu's help, Lin Jiyu moved to a quieter place, 3 streets away from Byway Street. It was a small courtyard, and the rent was 500 won a month. It was quite affordable. Single rooms went for even cheaper, only 200 won. The courtyard was a bit remote, with few neighbors around, but that suited him perfectly. He'd definitely be practicing martial arts in the future. A secluded location meant he wouldn't disturb anyone. Back on Byway Street, Manager Wu brought Lin Jiyu to Qingsu Tower for a meal. Qingsu Tower was a well-known restaurant, famous for its great dishes at affordable prices. Originally, Lin Jiyu had intended to treat Manager Wu as thanks, but Manager Wu refused no matter what, so he ended up being the host. Do you still plan to pursue civil exams in the future, young sir? Manager Wu asked, his eyes fixed intently on him. This young sir was the tea house's lucky charm. Whether the business would continue to thrive depended on him. If Lin Jiyu really intended to resume pursuing the civil exams, he wouldn't be able to keep storytelling at their tea house. No. Given my current situation, getting a recommendation and gaining the qualifications to sit the exams isn't easy. Other than that, the civil exams are just too difficult, said Lin Jiyu, shaking his head. After arriving in Songi City, he had applied for a temporary identity card and was registered under a temporary managed household. It was a start, but with this kind of temporary registration, getting exam eligibility was troublesome. He would need to find a clan to sponsor him, restore his academic records, or be noticed by someone influential. Phew! Manager Wu quietly let out a breath of relief. With stories as captivating as yours, I believe it won't take more than a few years before you're a household name in Songi City, Manager Wu said flatteringly. I'll take your kind words to heart. Lin Jiyu replied with a smile. They chatted while eating, and after a few bites of food to fill his belly, Lin Jiyu brought up the real topic. Manager Wu, do you know any veteran martial arts instructors? Asked Lin Jiyu. You want to learn martial arts? Manager Wu asked in surprise. Yes, I want to pick up some skills for self-protection. You know I'm all alone in Songi City, with no family or relatives. It's easy for petty thugs to take advantage of me. So I figured it'd be better if I had some martial skills for protection, said Lin Jiyu, giving an explanation. That's true, said Manager Wu, nodding in agreement. The laws in this world weren't as comprehensive as in his previous life, and neither were they applied as strictly. The authorities had limited influence, and many matters were handled by people of high social standing or clans. People like Lin Jiyu, who had no backing, often ended up as easy targets. If you want to learn martial arts, I do know someone, and you've actually met him before, Manager Wu said with a smile. I know him too, asked Lin Jiyu as he was a little surprised. He hadn't been in Songi City for long and knew only a handful of people, none of whom had any martial training, as far as he could recall. Yes, he's a regular at our tea house. He used to come often just to pass the time listening to storytelling. Ever since you started telling stories here, he's shown up almost every day. I often see him laughing heartily while listening. It's clear he really enjoys your stories, said Manager Wu. Would he be willing to teach me? Lin Jiyu asked nervously. He had heard that many martial arts were passed only to male descendants of a family and never made available to anyone else, much less to outsiders. Well, I think he would. I've seen quite a few people learn martial arts from him. He enjoys your storytelling so much. He should be willing to teach you a few skills, Manager Wu said. His name is Liang Song, looks to be around 50, has a limp, and usually sits by the window. The one who tips so generously? Lin Jiyu exclaimed in surprise. He remembered him clearly because of his generous tipping. Liang Song was actually his top contributor, but he looked rather ordinary and even had a limp. He didn't seem strong at all. Yes, that's him. Don't be fooled by his limp. Liang Song is actually very powerful. A few years ago, someone harassed a woman in the tea house. He didn't even look at the guy, he just casually flicked his chopsticks, and they shot through the palms of 3 burly men like sharp arrows, said Manager Wu while sipping his tea. Impressive, Lin Jiyu exclaimed in admiration. To pierce through the palms of 3 big men with chopsticks without even looking at them required extremely sharp perception and immense strength. The two chatted while eating, and time flew by in a flash. Before they knew it, it was time for storytelling. Over the past 10 or so days, Lin Jiu's stories had spread far and wide by word of mouth. As his fame grew, more and more young nobles came to Jade Pill Tea House to hear his storytelling. These young nobles tipped much more generously than the average guest. Today, Lin Jiu earned over 301, which was far more than usual. The wage was still 101 for a 2-hour session, but tips had reached over 201. At the story's climax, the guests tipped with excitement and enthusiasm. Seeing their eager response, Lin Jiu became even more passionate in his storytelling, extending the session by over 10 minutes. "Look, Liang Song came today, too," said Wu Yinghe, pointing toward Liang Song, who was sitting alone by the window. He looked to be in his 50s and had messy, shoulder-length hair and a scruffy beard. He was unkempt and disheveled. After the storytelling ended, the man seemed to be in a good mood. He drank a few small cups of wine, gazing out the window to enjoy the view as a faint smile appeared on his face. Straightening his clothes, Lin Jiu picked up a jug of wine and walked over. The wine was called General's Tears, and it was a well-known brew. Though it wasn't very high in alcohol content, it had a fiery taste and quickly went to the head. Manager Wu had given the information to Lin Jiu that this was Liang Song's favorite drink. "Greetings, Master Liang. I am Lin Jiu, the storyteller at Jade Pill Tea House. I brought you some wine. Please give it a try," Lin Jiu politely said as he filled Liang Song's cup. Liang Song glanced at him with a smile, but said nothing, continuing to enjoy the scenery outside the window. Not wanting to interrupt his leisure, Lin Jiu ordered a few side dishes and quietly accompanied him in watching the view. Aside from storytelling, he had no pressing matters to attend to. A long while passed. After over an hour of watching the scenery, just as dusk began to fall, Liang Song finally had his fill of the view. He turned to Lin Jiu and said, "Go on. What is it?" He raised his cup and drank it all in one go. The fiery burn traveled down his throat and into his belly. "Oh," Liang Song let out a satisfied sigh, fully displaying his bold and uninhibited nature. "I fled from Jinan City, and I was separated from my parents and relatives along the way. Now I am alone in Somi City with no one to rely on, and when I'm wandering alone outside, anyone can bully me however they want. I heard you're skilled in martial arts, so I'd like to learn from you. Master Liang, please teach me." Lin Jiu refilled Liang Song's cup before cupping his fists in a respectful plea. "Martial arts are a bitter path, even harder than studying. You have real literary talent. Why not keep studying and aim for the civil exams?" Liang Song said calmly. "Great chaos is coming. If I can't even protect myself, how could I possibly focus on the civil exams?" replied Lin Jiu, shaking his head. Liang Song looked Lin Jiu up and down and gave a slight shake of his head. "It's not that I can't teach you, but you're getting on in years. Starting martial arts now is a bit late. The martial path trains the physical body, including your muscles, bones, and skin. It also trains your body inwardly, cultivating breath. Training the body needs to start from a young age. It demands excellent natural aptitude and a regimen of herbal baths and bone-strengthening exercises to build a strong foundation. Once you've grown and your bones have set, the process becomes 100 times harder. One misstep could leave lasting damage. Starting now will take twice the effort for half the result. Most likely, you won't get far. Are you sure you still want to learn? That's fine. I'm not afraid of hardship and can endure tough training. As long as I can learn martial arts, that's enough." Lin Jiu replied quickly. "Well, it's not like I've got anything better to do. I'll teach you then. I really like that character, Yin Qixia, you spoke about. Tell more stories like that in the future," Liang Song said with a smile. "Got it. Thank you, Master Liang. I'll write a story just for you next time," replied Lin Jiu, overjoyed. With a grand wave, he called over a waiter and ordered a few more side dishes. "If you've finished what you came to say, get going. Don't be an eyesore. Find me at number 33 Jindong Street tomorrow morning," said Liang Song. He shooed Lin Jiu off like he was swatting away a fly. "All right, I won't disturb your peace any longer. Please enjoy your meal," said Lin Jiu as he stood up. He turned away, clenched his fists in excitement, and couldn't stop grinning. Things had gone much more smoothly than expected. Master Liang had agreed outright, without even mentioning money. Then again, it made sense. After all, he was one of Lin Jiu's most generous tippers, always giving over 21. He probably wasn't short on cash. On his way home, Lin Jiu bought some meat and vegetables to nourish himself properly. Back when he lived in the Baishan district, he never dared to buy much meat or fresh food as he was afraid of drawing unwanted attention. This time, he bought half a gene of pork belly, planning to braise it once he got home. It had been a long time since he last had braised meat. In the morning, just as dawn was breaking, Lin Jiu woke up early. Since moving to his new place, he'd been woken up by the rooster next door, which had a hoarse, grating crow. It was not at all like the clear, crisp calls of normal roosters. It was quite unpleasant to hear. After freshening up, he enjoyed a hearty breakfast of braised meat and thin porridge prepared the night before. Today marked the start of his martial arts training, so he had to ensure proper nutrition. Having suffered through hunger and exposure to the elements, his body was frail. He was so thin that he was nearly skin and bones. Over the past few weeks, he had earned a decent sum through storytelling. He could finally afford good food, and his body had started to recover, but still, he remained weak. After running just a few li, he would need to stop and rest. Dressed in a snug, practical outfit suited for martial training, and with his long hair tied up, Lin Jiu looked sharp and capable, shedding some of his usual scholarly aura. When he stepped out, he saw that many people were already out and about. In this world with little in the way of entertainment, people tended to sleep and rise early. When he first arrived, Lin Jiu had trouble adjusting. But after a few days of boredom, he began going to bed early as well. His past life troubles, such as sleepless nights and drowsy workdays, had all but vanished. He had now developed the healthy habit of sleeping and waking early. Number 33, Jindong Street. It was a spacious courtyard, more than twice the size of the place Lin Jiu was renting. From the outside, the house looked exquisitely built and likely expensive. Lin Jiu wasn't sure whether Master Liang had rented it or bought it. Knock, 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 knock. Lin Jiu knocked in a steady rhythm, and before long, the door creaked open. Liang Song, who was limping slightly, came to open the door and turned around without a word. He then continued to water the flowers. The courtyard was filled with purple flowers, and the air carried a refreshing, fragrant scent that was truly pleasant. The plants had lush green leaves, and their blossoms were large and unusual. They were like strikingly beautiful, fluttering butterflies in vibrant colors. Just as Lin Jiu eagerly stepped forward to help water the flowers, Liang Song said, "Don't touch anything. Just find a spot and sit down." He treasured these flowers and didn't want someone unfamiliar with them, like Lin Jiu, to accidentally damage them. Silently, Lin Jiu took a seat beside the stone table in the courtyard. It took Master Liang over an hour to finish watering the plants before he finally walked over, satisfied, and sat down beside Lin Jiu. He walked with a limp and looked like an unkempt old man. He was completely lacking the aura or bearing of a martial arts expert. Liang Song glanced at the items Lin Jiu had brought and said with a smile, "There's no need to be so stiff. Just relax. You even brought meat for me. That's very thoughtful of you. I don't go in for formal disciple ceremonies here. And besides, I haven't decided to take you in as a disciple yet." It was merely on a whim that he intended to teach a few basic martial techniques. As for how much Lin Jiu could grasp would depend on his comprehension. Lin Jiu smiled slightly without saying a word. He picked up the steeped tea on the table and obediently poured a cup for Liang Song. Liang Song took the tea Lin Jiu offered, nibbling on the snacks he'd brought, and spoke with evident interest. Martial arts require comprehension, perseverance, and resources. Your physical foundation is far too weak, so you'll need a period of conditioning first. He quite enjoyed the stories Lin Jiu told. He found them amusing, and many of the characters really appealed to his taste. But there was too much scholarly sentiment in them. The protagonists were always scholars, so it was tiresome to listen to after a while. If he had a say, Yin Qixia should have been the main character that would have been proper. I've made some money lately, and I've already started working on my health, said Lin Jiu with a nod. That's not enough. Conditioning the body takes both nourishment and training. Liang Song said calmly, your foundation's poor. You've never practiced martial arts, and you've barely exercised. Your waist, legs, and feet are all soft and weak. A towering structure starts from the ground up. If you want to train well, you have to begin with the most basic stance work. Liang Song walked to the center of the courtyard. He loosened his shoulders, dropped into a half squat, pushed his arms forward, and let his body rise and fall gently. It was like ripples stirred by a soft breeze. "Follow me. This is one of the foundational stances, the horse stance," said Liang Song. Lin Jiyu stepped forward and mimicked Liang Song's posture. He half squatted, his arms outstretched, and his body bounced gently as if astride a horse. "Your form is wrong." As the name implies, the horse stance was inspired by horseback riding. When you stand, your posture should rise and fall, as though you're conjuring a horse beneath you. Picture yourself riding a galloping horse, your legs moving with the rhythm of the steed, fusing that horse into your waist and thighs, said Liang Song with a gentle voice. His body undulated in rhythm as he went high and low, just like a man galloping on a fine steed. After a brief demonstration, he walked over to Lin Jiyu's side and began correcting him. He said, "Cling to the ground with all 5 toes. Let your knees rise naturally with every rise and fall. Keep shifting your center of gravity." Following Liang Song's instructions, Lin Jiyu gradually got into the rhythm. Whenever his posture was incorrect, Liang Song would toss a small stone at the spot where his strength was misapplied. Soon, Lin Jiyu had grasped the correct form for the horse stance. But when he first tried holding it, he couldn't last even 10 minutes before his entire body trembled and he collapsed onto the ground. "Go back and practice. Come back once you can hold the horse stance for a full 2 hours. If you can't reach that within a month, don't bother coming again," said Liang Song. He waved his hand, signaling Lin Jiyu to leave. He wasn't the type to teach just anyone, but Lin Jiyu was someone he found agreeable, so he offered a chance. Whether or not he would teach him further depended on Lin Jiyu himself. If he didn't even have the willpower to hold the stance for 2 hours, then there was no point in teaching him at all. "Yes, master," replied Lin Jiyu as he rose unsteadily with his legs trembling. His body was too weak, and he couldn't even hold the horse stance for 10 minutes before breaking down. He didn't leave right away, but instead respectfully asked, "Master, is there any kind of decoction or medicinal bath recipe that can help the body recover faster?" Reaching the point of holding the horse stance for 2 hours within a month was extremely difficult. He couldn't even manage a 30-minute jog right now. And given his poor physical condition, it would be nearly impossible without the aid of medicinal baths or decoctions. There are, but such formulas are expensive. Even the most basic ones will cost over 1 tael of silver per batch. I'll give you a prescription for tonifying qi and enriching blood. Just take it to the pharmacy and have it prepared. It should cost just a bit over a tael. Don't let them overcharge you," said Liang Song. He asked Lin Jiyu to bring him a pen and paper, then began scribbling with bold, sweeping strokes. His handwriting was just like his personality. It was wild and unrestrained, with a touch of careless flair. Or rather, frankly speaking, it was a mess. Liang Song's handwriting was terrible, but who said a martial master's calligraphy must be elegant? Staring at the scrawl, Lin Jiyu had to spend quite some effort just to decipher what was written. "Thank you, master," said Lin Jiyu with a respectful tone as he took the prescription. After bidding farewell to Liang Song, he headed straight for the pharmacy. It's true, literati stay poor, while warriors get rich. Just one prescription costs a whole tael of silver, thought Lin Jiyu, sighing in his heart. It was only because his storytelling had gained some popularity that he could earn money more easily now. For an average person, earning a tael of silver might take an entire month. It was barely enough to buy a single medicinal decoction. Including the 300 won he would earn today, Lin Jiyu had saved up over 1,800 won. At current rates, around 1,500 won could be exchanged for 1 tael of silver. It was just enough for him to afford a batch of herbs. Passing by a pharmacy, Lin Jiyu went in and picked up a set of medicinal herbs. This kind of basic qi tonifying and blood-enriching prescription could be found in nearly every pharmacy. As Master Liang had said, the herbs cost him 1 tael of silver plus an extra 121. Originally, the shopkeeper had asked for 1 tael and 500 won, but after some bargaining, Lin Jiyu brought the price down by over 300 won. That was more than a full day's earnings for him. Back home, he cleaned his newly bought medicine pot, added fresh water and herbs, and set it to simmer over a gentle flame. Boiling the decoction wasn't as difficult as imagined. He just needed to control the heat and wait patiently. A single batch of qi tonifying and blood-nourishing herbs could be boiled 3 times, though the potency would drop sharply after each round. Since decocting took a long time, he used the waiting period to practice his horse stance in the courtyard. With his toes grasping the ground, his body rose and fell like horseback riding. His eyes were fixed on the distant horizon. His body was still weak, so he could only hold the stance for about 3 or 4 minutes at a time. Each time, he would hold out until his legs went numb and his body collapsed. Then, he would stretch his limbs and rest for a while. Once his strength returned, he resumed the stance again. Huff, huff, huff. The moon shone bright, the stars were few and scattered. The autumn breeze stirred gently, rustling the leaves in the courtyard. A faint medicinal fragrance drifted through the air. Lin Jiu sat on the ground, panting against the wall while his legs trembled uncontrollably. He had been training for over 2 hours, and his feet no longer felt like his own. The horse stance doesn't work. It didn't appear in the skill panel, thought Lin Jiu. He glanced at the data in his mind. There was no trace of the horse stance. He wasn't disappointed, though, as the horse stance wasn't a complete martial art. It was merely a foundational training method. The first batch of medicinal decoction had finished brewing. Lin Jiu rested for a moment before downing it. Warmth spread through his belly as the decoction slid down his throat. I'll heat some water for a soak, then resume training tomorrow, he thought. Lin Jiu was ready to rest. If he pushed further, he would hit his physical limit and need several days to recover. During that time, he wouldn't be able to train at all. After soaking in hot water for an hour, he felt much better. Hours of training had left his body tired, so he slept deeply that night. At dawn, he was once again woken by the hoarse crowing of the rooster. Huh! Lin Jiu exclaimed in curious surprise as he sat up in bed. Unlike last night when he went to sleep, his legs and lower back barely ached after waking up. Did that qi tonifying and blood-nourishing decoction really take effect this fast? Lin Jiu wondered. The storytelling didn't begin until the afternoon, so he had no other tasks in the morning. After breakfast, Lin Jiu resumed his horse stance training. This time, he held on for over 10 minutes before reaching his limit. He rested briefly, then got up to resume the stance. If he couldn't maintain the horse stance for 2 hours within a month, Liangsong wouldn't teach him any martial techniques. Time flowed by slowly. The inner city was well ordered, unlike the chaotic Baishan district in the outer city. After moving into the inner city, Lin Jiu's life settled into a quiet routine. Days passed one after another. Aside from storytelling, he devoted the rest of his time to practicing the horse stance. In addition to the horse stance, Lin Jiu also added push-ups to his routine. The qi tonifying and blood-nourishing formula given by Liangsong worked wonders. Its high cost came with quality. One batch of herbs could be brewed 3 times, with 1 bowl a day, wiping away fatigue by the next morning. In the blink of an eye, over 20 days had passed. With intense training and heavy meals for nourishment, Lin Jiu's body had grown noticeably stronger. Faint outlines of lean muscle could now be seen beneath his skin. In his courtyard, with his legs bent low, Lin Jiu's body rose and fell like a galloping steed. For more than 20 days, he had trained with relentless diligence, pushing himself until his legs ached and trembled. Gradually, he became addicted to the horse stance. Whether eating, storytelling, or during any spare moment, he would remain in the horse stance for several minutes or even half an hour. He even integrated elements of the stance while walking, giving his posture a rather odd appearance. The time he could maintain the stance gradually increased. At first, he was only able to hold it for less than 10 minutes, but now he could hold it for an hour. As a matter of fact, he had been maintaining the horse stance in the courtyard for nearly 2 hours. As sweat soaked through his clothes, Lin Jiu exhaled steadily with his chest rising and falling. His legs had begun to tremble uncontrollably, and beads of sweat the size of beans slid down his forehead. Hold on. The time's almost up, Lin Jiu cheered himself on internally. His eyes stayed fixed on the clepsydra, 1, in the courtyard. It was an ancient tool for tracking time, and it showed that less than 10 minutes remained before he would complete 2 hours in the horse stance. A cold wind swept through, and the weather had turned a bit chilly. As his body rose and fell with his breath, his tremors grew more intense. He was reaching his limit. Come on, just a few more minutes. I'll break through my physical limit and earn another unit of origin force, muttered Lin Jiu, continuing to encourage himself. For over 20 days, he had carefully controlled his training, avoiding overexertion or breaching his limits, fearing it would disrupt future progress. But today, seeing he was about to complete 2 hours, Lin Jiu gritted his teeth and decided to push through his limit as well. Time passed slowly. Another 20 minutes slipped by. He had already held the horse stance for 2 hours, but he did not stop. He truly felt that he was close to surpassing his physical limit. His face had gone pale, his trembling grew worse, and his legs began to shudder violently. As he gritted his teeth, Lin Jiu's face twisted with strain, appearing somewhat savage. He held on for several more minutes. Finally, he felt as though some barrier within his body had shattered. His essence, energy, and spirit surged upward, fusing into a single force. In his consciousness, his origin force increased by 1 unit. Heaven rewards the diligent. Name: Lin Jiu. Origin force: 2. Skills. The moment he broke through his limit, Lin Jiu let out a long breath and collapsed to the ground. He stared up at the sky, and a satisfied smile bloomed across his face. "I did it finally," he exclaimed, overjoyed. He had succeeded in holding the horse stance for 2 hours within a month. Now, he could begin learning martial arts from Liang Song. After resting for over 10 minutes, and once the trembling subsided, Lin Jiu got up and began stretching his muscles and joints. When he finished, he rested for another 30 minutes before sinking into a hot bath that relaxed his entire body. In the afternoon, he arrived at the tea house, walking with a shaky gait. Seeing his odd gait, Manager Wu asked with concern, "You all right?" Over the past month, their relationship had grown much closer. Thanks to Lin Jiu, Jade Pill Tea House had become increasingly popular, catching up quickly to Overflowing Fragrance Tea House. At this rate, it would soon surpass it. Overflowing Fragrance Tea House was the most renowned tea house in Somi City, and for Manager Wu, the idea of catching up to it had once felt unimaginable. "I'm fine. Just overtrained this morning," Lin Jiu replied with a smile. Compared to a month ago, his physique was much more solid and his energy was vibrant. There was no trace of the vagabond he once was. "Can you hold the horse stance for 2 hours now?" Manager Wu asked curiously. He knew about it, as Lin Jiu had told him. "Almost. I just need a few days to finish recovering," replied Lin Jiu. "Then congratulations," Manager Wu said with a smile, genuinely happy for him. Before long, it was time for storytelling. Amid the enthusiastic calls of the patrons, Lin Jiu stepped up. "Pa!" With a sharp slap of the wooden clapper, the storytelling began. He started speaking. "Last time, we spoke of." Time passed again, and 5 more days went by. His body had recovered from the tearing pain of pushing past its limits. Good thing the customers were generous with tips. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to afford everything, Lin Jiu sighed inwardly. Over the past month, money had flowed out like water. As his popularity grew, Manager Wu raised his wages to 200 won per day. With the daily tips added in, he earned nearly 500 won a day. Even so, little was left by the end of the day as most went toward eggs, meat, and qi tonifying medicinal herbs. Knock, 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 knock. Early in the morning, Lin Jiu knocked on Liang Song's door. The courtyard gate opened, and Liang Song looked unsurprised. "Go stand in the courtyard. Let me see how your training's coming along," he said. "Yes, sir," replied Lin Jiu, nodding and walking to the center of the courtyard. He spread his legs slightly, bent his knees, extended his arms, and gazed straight ahead. His body began to rise and fall gently, like riding a galloping steed. The muscles in his waist and legs tensed and released as his center of gravity shifted with the rhythm. Liang Song watched for a while, then nodded in satisfaction. Lin Jiu's form was spot on. He didn't continue watching Lin Jiu's stance, but instead picked up a watering can and began tending to the flowers and plants in the courtyard. The sky gradually brightened as morning came. Ever since winter began, the days had grown noticeably shorter. Lin Jiu had been standing for nearly 2 hours. His face was flushed, his breath slightly uneven, but he still looked capable of continuing. "That's enough," Liang Song said, beckoning him over for some tea. Lin Jiu straightened up, shaking out his slightly sore legs and arms, a look of excitement spreading across his face. He had done it, he could finally begin martial training. Even with such a poor foundation, your perseverance and perception aren't bad. For you to reach this level in a month is commendable, remarked Liang Song, his tone carrying clear satisfaction with Lin Jiyu. Taking a sip of tea, he said, "Let me first explain what martial cultivation truly is." Lin Jiyu sat quietly, listening with utmost attentiveness. Martial cultivation is split into two categories: external cultivation and internal cultivation. External cultivation means tempering the skin, flesh, and tendons. Internal cultivation means cultivating qi. To master martial arts, one must first complete external cultivation. By tempering the body, muscles become full and solid, tendons grow powerful and gain elasticity. One will yield explosive force and high-impact resistance. This is the muscle forging realm. Once the skin, flesh, and tendons are trained, you then move on to the bone forging realm. Bone forging progresses from outer to inner, strengthening every part of the skeleton until it grows denser, gains piercing strength, and can withstand intense explosive force. At its peak, the bones become like iron, nearly indestructible. However, bone forging will be especially difficult for you. Without undergoing childhood tempering, reaching the bones like iron stage will be an uphill battle. That covers external cultivation. Liang Song paused before continuing. Now let's talk about cultivating internal qi. Qi refers to regulated breathing. After external cultivation, you gain better control over your body and can begin practicing specialized breathing techniques. Through these breathing methods, your internal organs are strengthened, your breath becomes deep and enduring, and your strength, stamina, and resilience reach fearsome levels. This is the organ forging realm. These are the first three realms of martial cultivation: the muscle forging realm, the bone forging realm, and the organ forging realm. For now, just knowing these is enough. The latter realms are still far from your reach, so I won't tell you yet lest you aim too high too soon, Liang Song said plainly. He stood up and removed his outer robe, revealing the vest underneath and the smooth lines of his muscles. Seeing this, Lin Jiyu quickly got up and followed. "We can't use blades in the inner city, so I'll teach you the barbaric ox fist instead. It's a widely spread technique, suitable for someone starting martial arts later in life, like you. Its power is solid, and while it's easy to learn, it's difficult to master. When trained to a high level, it fortifies both the inside and outside of the body. The bones grow sturdy, and you can reach the peak of the organ forging realm. The barbaric ox fist has 8 basic moves and 128 variations. I'll go through it once, so you can get familiar with it." As he spoke, Liang Song changed the way he stood. Lin Jiyu noticed that when Liang Song got serious, his limp seemed to vanish completely. The barbaric ox fist is true to its name. It is a fist technique derived from the movements of an ox. The essence lies in the word barbaric. While training, you must imagine yourself as an ox, charging forward without hesitation and fearless in every strike, explained Liang Song. He spread his legs, lowered his body, and assumed the stance. As he formed the stance, an invisible aura radiated from him. "This is the first move, the barbaric ox charge," said Liang Song loudly. With a sudden stomp of his right foot, power rippled through his legs, coursed into his waist, and surged into his arms. His torso leaned forward slightly as his fists burst forth with overwhelming force, like a pair of ox horns striking out. His muscles erupted in unison, channeling force into his arms, which struck the wooden post in the courtyard with terrifying impact. The post cracked with a sharp sound, faint lines appearing on its surface. "So powerful," exclaimed Lin Jiyu. Seeing the might in Liang Song's punches, he couldn't help but click his tongue in awe. This is the barbaric ox fist. It's the barbaric that defines it from start to finish. There must not be a shred of hesitation when throwing a punch. Liang Song's voice rang out as he continued demonstrating for Lin Jiyu. This strike is the oxhorn thrust. The power pivots at the waist, and the strength lies in the abdomen. This one is the oxtail whip. Watching Master Liang demonstrate, Lin Jiyu's eyes lit up with intensity. This is real martial arts. Every punch and every move carried explosive power, and that filled him with longing. Soon, the routine was complete. Liang Song stopped and asked, "How do you feel?" "It's incredible." Heart pounding with excitement, Lin Jiyu cupped his fists and said with a bow, "Master, please teach me." No need for all the formalities. Scholars really do love their rituals and etiquette, huh? Start by practicing the full routine with me. Let me see how sharp your comprehension is, said Liang Song. Liang Song broke the barbaric ox fist down move by move, explaining each part carefully to Lin Jiyu. Under Liang Song's guidance, Lin Jiyu trained with great focus. Martial arts were far more difficult than he had imagined. He had to master how to exert strength from different muscle groups, understand their training methods, and grow stronger through constant repetition. Immersed in the barbaric ox fist, time flew by for Lin Jiyu. Good. Your comprehension's not bad, said Liang Song, nodding in approval. Lin Jiyu proved to be a quick learner. Just a few hints were enough for him to grasp the essence, making him an easy student to teach. Moreover, his perseverance was remarkable. After over 4 hours of training, with several short breaks in between, he had completely exhausted his stamina, yet he kept grinding through with clenched teeth. Now go through the entire barbaric ox fist routine. I'll point out where you're lacking, said Liang Song. Yes, sir. Lin Jiyu responded firmly. After more than 4 hours of training, his entire body was drenched in sweat. The intense exertion, coupled with lactic acid buildup, left him sore all over. Yet Lin Jiyu didn't hesitate in the slightest and began training again. Almost there, he thought. Lin Jiyu could feel himself nearing his physical limit. If he could endure for just 1 more minute after hitting his limit, he felt that he would be able to break through and gain 1 unit of origin force. Heaven rewards the diligent. Name: Lin Jiyu. Origin force: 2. Skills: Barbaric Ox Fist Dormancy, 3%. Lin Jiyu looked at the data in his mind and was filled with excitement. Just as he had imagined, martial arts technique could indeed be added to the skill panel. Filled with intense anticipation, Lin Jiyu assumed the stance for the barbaric ox fist. He stomped hard with his foot, his leg muscles flexing sharply as the power linked through his waist and shot into his arms. His upper body tilted forward slightly, fists lashing out like twin ox horns brimming with raw power. First move, barbaric ox charge. As his fist struck forward, Lin Jiyu immediately felt sharp pain in his waist, legs, and arms. Cramp. Just moments ago, he had looked heroic, but now he was sprawled on the ground in a sorry state. His body twisted awkwardly as he tried to ease the cramping pain. Seeing this, Liang Song couldn't help but laugh out loud. This kid is nearly out of stamina, yet he's still trying to act tough. Using the explosive barbaric ox fist while already overtrained is a sure way to cramp up, thought Liang Song. Rest for a bit. Your body's nearly at its limit, Liang Song said. He stepped forward and knelt beside Lin Jiyu, kneading and massaging the cramped areas. The pain quickly subsided. Thank you, master, said Lin Jiyu. He stood up and stretched, loosening his whole body as he planned to continue soon. He was extremely close to his physical limit, so he couldn't afford to quit now. Once he pushed past the limit, he would gain another unit of origin force. While listening to Liang Song explain some foundational martial principles, Lin Jiyu continued to gently loosen his muscles. Soon, he felt his muscles had relaxed enough. The cramping sensation in his muscles faded, so Lin Jiyu planned to resume his martial arts practice. He was close to breaking through his limit and gaining another unit of origin force. Seeing Lin Jiyu take his stance in the center of the courtyard, Liang Song spoke up to reprimand him. What are you doing? Your body is almost at its limit. If you keep training, don't expect to do anything else this afternoon. It's fine. I'll let Manager Wu know this afternoon that I won't be storytelling. I'll go tomorrow instead, said Lin Jiyu. Pushing himself to his limit was exactly what he wanted. How else could he gain origin force? Ridiculous. Don't you realize that storytelling is important? How can you just decide not to go? What am I supposed to listen to if you don't go? Besides, training must be balanced. Overdoing it is pointless. Go back, rest, and focus on preparing your storytelling for the afternoon, demanded Liang Song. What a joke. He inwardly scoffed. He thoroughly enjoyed Lin Jiyu's stories. How could he let him skip storytelling just because of training? Lin Jiyu was dumbfounded. He wasn't sure whether he should laugh or cry at Liang Song's words. It was no wonder Master Liang had been so concerned about his body. He just didn't want him to overtrain and end up missing the afternoon storytelling. Yes, Master, Lin Jiyu replied helplessly. It seemed he could only try pushing his physical limits again later that night. You've more or less learned the barbaric ox fist. From now on, You can practice the technique at home. If you have something you need to ask, come find me at the Jade Pill Tea House. I might not always be home. Also, you need to prepare your storytelling carefully each day. Only by telling the story well can you earn more money. And only if you earn enough silver to support yourself can you train your martial techniques properly, said Liang Song with a serious tone. Thank you for your guidance, master, replied Lin Jiu. After returning home, Lin Jiu washed up and changed into a scholar's outfit. He hadn't felt especially tired while training, but after over an hour of rest, his whole body ached and felt weak, and even lifting his arms made him tremble. At lunch, he picked up his bowl, but his hands trembled so badly that he had to set it back down. As the saying goes, one bursts forth with energy at first, weakens on the second try, and is spent by the third. Lin Jiu started to feel that continuing his training to break through his physical limits tonight would be difficult. After lunch, Lin Jiu stumbled over to the Jade Pill Tea House. Young sir, did you overtrain again? Asked Wu Yinghe as he looked at the staggering Lin Jiu with a wry smile. Seeing Lin Jiu's effort, he thought to himself, this boy really went too hard. I spent several hours this morning learning martial arts from Master Liang. I am a little tired, but it's nothing serious. Manager Wu, thank you for introducing me to Master Liang. Once I've saved enough money, I'll treat you to a trip to the 100 Flowers Pavilion, said Lin Jiu with a smile. After nearly a month of tough horse stance training, he had passed Master Liang's test and finally learned some martial techniques. If it hadn't been for Manager Wu's introduction, learning martial arts would have taken a lot of effort and cost him quite a bit of silver. Nonsense. I should be the one treating you. If it weren't for you, the Jade Pill Tea House wouldn't be doing nearly this well. You know, it's probably already surpassed the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House by now, bragged Manager Wu with a wide grin, the fat on his face bunching up in his delight. Lin Jiu felt that Manager Wu had gotten even fatter lately. I guess it's true that a broad heart makes for a broad body. By the way, someone from the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House came to see me last night. They offered 250 won a day this time, said Lin Jiu. He wasn't making things up just to get a salary raise. Last night, someone from the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House really came looking for him, clearly trying to poach him. The Jade Pill Tea House had become more and more popular, drawing away many of the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House's customers. Their manager, Jia, was finally getting anxious and decided to make a move. Young sir, please don't go to the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House. I'll ask the boss to raise your pay to 300 won a day. Manager Wu exclaimed, flustered. He had indeed noticed people from the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House loitering near their building these past few days. As Lin Jiu's fame spread, many tea house patrons came specifically for him, boosting the Jade Pill Tea House's business several times over. If he were poached, business would go back to being as dull as it was before. Don't worry, I won't go to the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House. To begin with, if it hadn't been for you giving me a chance back then, I wouldn't be where I am today. But Manager Wu, you have to keep your word 300 won a day, right? Lin Jiu said with a cheeky smile before staggering toward the storytelling platform. He lived by the principle of having a clear conscience and repaying even the smallest kindness 100-fold. Back when he was down and out, he had visited many tea houses, but most had turned him away because he was too young and looked dirty. Only Manager Wu had patiently chatted with him, believed in his storytelling, and given him a chance. Lin Jiu truly felt grateful to Wu Yinghe. He only mentioned Overflowing Fragrance's poaching attempt as a way to raise his own pay. In no time, another afternoon had passed. The crowd's cheers were even more enthusiastic than usual. Master Liang also tipped him 51, showing that he was still Lin Jiu's top supporter. Master, why did you tip so much today? Asked Lin Jiu as he sat across from Liang Song with a wine jug in hand. I tipped you because your story was good. If it wasn't, I'd have given you a beating instead. I'm really satisfied this time, you know? You really should tell more stories about heroes like Yin Qixia or Zhuo Qianhu. As martial artists, we must slay Yaos too and cleanse demons from the world, bringing back a clear and bright sky to mankind, said Liang Song with a smile on his face, clearly pleased with today's storytelling. Master, do Yaos and demons really exist in this world? Also, can martial cultivation truly help slay Yaos and cleanse demons when practiced to a high level? Asked Lin Jiu curiously. In his previous life, he had often heard bizarre stories of yaos, demons, ghosts, and spirits, 3, playing tricks on people. These were all second-hand stories, accounts from someone with a 4th or 5th degree connection to his family or friends, a connection so far removed that he wouldn't even know how to describe it. Nothing like that had ever happened to him. They exist. There are yaos and demons in this world, but they're not as terrifying as you make them sound. You tell those stories so convincingly. I almost thought you'd seen them yourself. Liang Song smiled, then said, "This world is vast and full of unknown mysteries. Once your status and strength improve, you'll gradually come into contact with them." Ah, so they really exist. Lin Jiyu froze, a faint sense of crisis rising in his heart. Don't worry. If the sky falls, the tall ones will hold it up. As long as Great Way doesn't collapse, those yaos and demons wouldn't dare wreak havoc in the cities. But you must realize that in this world, humans aren't necessarily any more virtuous than those yaos and demons, said Liang Song with a sigh. Sensing his master's dampened mood, Lin Jiyu drank his wine in silence. After seeing that his master had come out of his lengthy lull, he asked again, "Then, Master, can martial arts, when trained to a deep level, really be used to fight those yaos and demons?" "Of course they can. Why wouldn't they be able to?" Liang Song replied firmly. "Just like Zhuo Qianhu in your story, once your martial skills reach a powerful level, not even yaos and demons are worthy to be feared." But Zhuo Qianhu still ended up defeated and dead, grumbled Lin Jiyu in his heart, not daring to talk back. After all, one must show respect to their master. After admiring the scenery with Master Liang for a while and exchanging a few words on martial cultivation, Lin Jiyu took his leave. He had wanted to stay a little longer, but Master Liang seemed to be growing weary. Liang Song was a rather reserved man who usually preferred sitting alone by the window, quietly watching the scenery and the passers-by. On the way home, a familiar figure stepped out from the corner. "Mr. Lin, have you given yesterday's matter any thought?" asked the person. He was Jia Yanming, the manager of Overflowing Fragrance Tea House. Unlike Manager Wu, Jia Yanming had a well-proportioned build, a stern expression, and a pair of piercing eyes. He looked every bit the career-driven professional from Lin Jiyu's previous life. "I'm sorry, but the Jade Pill Tea House has always shown me kindness. Back when I didn't have much, I went to your tea house seeking work, but the server chased me away before I could even enter." "Such a shame," replied Lin Jiyu, with a look of regret on his face. At the time, Jia Yanming had also been present. He had shot Lin Jiyu a cold, indifferent glance, as if he were looking at a beggar at the door, and impatiently waved for the server to drive him away. "Please reconsider," Jia Yanming begged. "We're open to discussing the terms. At our tea house, we can offer you 300 won per shift, and even increase it based on the number of guests. For every 10 guests above the base count, we'll add 10 won. That Jade Pill Tea House, or whatever, is small and insignificant. Its development prospects don't even come close to those at the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House. As long as you come to our tea house, we will." "Sorry, but I'm not considering it for now," said Lin Jiyu, cutting him off and walking right past him. Jia Yanming slowly turned around, staring at his back with an unreadable expression before murmuring, "He's still young, after all. Even if he has read a few years of the classics, he wouldn't understand the harshness of the business world. He's sentimental, knows how to repay kindness, but Back in his courtyard, Lin Jiyu took off his green robe. It was uncomfortable, and he still preferred the fitted attire meant for martial training. He then took out the qi tonifying and blood-nourishing herbs he'd bought yesterday, poured them into the medicine pot, and began decocting them. "Phew, this is real hard labor. I'd love a maid right now," Lin Jiyu thought as he wiped the sweat from his forehead, panting heavily. He had already trained for several hours in the morning and was utterly exhausted. Chopping firewood, fetching water, and boiling it made him even more worn out. After a while of doing this, Lin Jiyu collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. He didn't want to move at all. Every slight motion was a test of willpower. "No, I must not give up so easily," Lin Jiyu shouted out, trying to psyche himself up. After a month of stance training, his willpower had improved significantly. He slowly got up from the ground, but even that one movement drained all the willpower he had just built up. "I guess I went too hard at Master Liang's place earlier," he muttered, pain coursing through his body. After a brief rest, he gritted his teeth and resumed training. Whenever heaven entrusts someone with great responsibility, it first tests their resolve. 1. Lin Jiyu recited, recalling a famous phrase from his past life to encourage himself. He endured the physical pain and the mental fatigue, pushing forward with his training. After all, if he couldn't even endure this much hardship, how could he ever achieve greatness? He moved in front of wooden stakes, wrapped in old clothing he had prepared earlier for punching practice. He then transitioned into his stance. While his strength was lacking, his posture was precise. Heh, huh. Letting out sharp shouts, Lin Jiyu began practicing his punches. Bang, 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 bang. His fists landed on the wooden posts, producing dull thuds. As time passed, Lin Jiyu got more and more into the rhythm, and the sound of punches striking the posts grew louder and more forceful. The beginning of training was always the hardest. Once one forced himself to start, the rest could be endured with clenched teeth. A gentle breeze stirred, causing the leaves to rustle softly. Beneath the moonlight, Lin Jiyu was drenched in sweat. His face was pale, and his lips were trembling slightly. His eyes were bloodshot, and with each punch, the muscles in his arms trembled involuntarily. It was a sign that he was nearing his limit. Hold on, just a bit more. I'm almost there, thought Lin Jiyu. With his teeth clenched and his mind stretched to the limit, Lin Jiyu used sheer willpower to fight through the searing pain coursing through his body. Another 10 minutes passed. That sensation of breaking through the body's limits and the mind instantly elevating surged forth. His essence, qi, and spirit condensed into one in that moment. He let out a long breath and collapsed to the ground in exhaustion, his muscles twitching uncontrollably from sheer fatigue. A smile appeared on Lin Jiyu's pale face as he muttered, "It's done." He had finally gained another unit of origin force. Heaven rewards the diligent. Name, Lin Jiyu. Origin force, 3. Skill, Barbaric Ox Fist Dormancy, 5%. The Barbaric Ox Fist is still 95% away from initiation. It'll take about 20 more days to initiate it. I wonder how much of an effect Origin Force has to boost the Barbaric Ox Fist, thought Lin Jiyu, full of anticipation. He lay resting on the ground for a full half-hour before getting up. He stretched his limbs, stripped off his clothes, and stepped into the prepared wooden bath. "Ah, that's the spot," he exclaimed. Submerged in warm water, he shivered pleasantly and felt some of the muscle fatigue fade away. "Let's try out what Origin Force can do," Lin Jiyu muttered to himself. Unable to hold back his eagerness, he decided to try it right away. Use 1 unit of Origin Force to enhance the Barbaric Ox Fist. As the thought was formed, 1 unit of Origin Force vanished. Immediately, the progress of the Barbaric Ox Fist began to rise rapidly. 6%, 10%, 20%, 50%, 80%, 100%. A mysterious energy surged from deep within his cells and began to remodel Lin Jiyu's muscles and tendons. At the same time, his mind fell into a strange state. It felt as though he was in an unfamiliar space, where he had only one purpose: to train the Barbaric Ox Fist. He trained madly in the Barbaric Ox Fist, throwing punch after punch, never stopping and never tiring, like a possessed demon. He had no idea how much time passed in that miraculous state, but his understanding of the Barbaric Ox Fist grew deeper and deeper. Eventually, he snapped out of the hazy state of mind. His eyes widened slowly, filled with awe. Unbelievable. Lin Jiyu felt as though he had trained endlessly in the Barbaric Ox Fist, without sleep or rest, but in reality, it was only a few seconds. His comprehension of the Barbaric Ox Fist was now incredibly profound. Suddenly, a strange sensation came from his nose, as if something was flowing out. He touched it with his right hand and saw a smear of blood under the moonlight. "Is this a nosebleed?" Lin Jiyu was stunned. A wave of dizziness struck him, his body feeling unbearably weak as his vision began to blur. "What's going on? Why does it feel like my body got even weaker?" wondered Lin Jiyu. Supporting himself on the edge of the tub with both hands, Lin Jiyu rested a while before recovering slightly. A wave of hunger and weakness swept through every cell in his body. His usual swarthy skin turned pale. Lin Jiyu gave it some thought and soon figured out what was happening. Origin Force put my mind into a special state, where time stretched and my spiritual form could train endlessly within. The results of that training carried over directly to my physical body, strengthening it as well. But without sufficient energy, it could only draw from my body's reserves, depleting my qi and bud. He pondered quietly, understanding the process. He continued to rest for a bit more until his vision cleared up. Splash! As soon as he stepped out of the tub, his vision went black again, a wave of dizziness washing over him. He quickly grabbed the edge of the tub for support, resting again before he could recover. It seemed like the depletion of blood qi was more severe than he expected. He picked up the medicinal decoction that he had prepared earlier in the courtyard. As soon as the decoction entered his stomach, Lin Jiyu felt a warm sensation in his abdomen. However, this didn't do much for his complexion, which remained somewhat pale. His stomach growled, and every cell in his body cried out with intense hunger. He went into the kitchen, preparing and devouring 5 bowls of noodles in a row. His belly bulged from fullness, yet that feeling of relentless hunger continued to linger. This is simply not enough. It's nowhere near enough. I'll boil another batch of herbs, Lin Jiyu muttered to himself. He retrieved the final batch of qi-tonifying and blood-nourishing herbs he bought and began decocting them. He had less than a tael of silver left at home and would need to work a few days before he had enough money to buy more. The scent of medicinal herbs wafted through the courtyard as Lin Jiyu looked at the data in his consciousness. The barbaric ox fist had finally reached the entry level. Heaven rewards the diligent. Name: Lin Jiyu. Origin Force: 2. Skill: Barbaric Ox Fist Initiation, 46%. The Barbaric Ox Fist had no clear tier distinctions, but based on one's proficiency in it, the practitioners could categorize their skill levels as Initiation, Competence, Initial Mastery, Advanced Mastery, and Perfection. 1 unit of Origin Force probably saved me more than a year of hard training. Lin Jiyu pondered, roughly calculating the numbers. Master Liang had said that for an ordinary person, it would take about 2 to 3 years of hard training to go from initiation to competence. But with Lin Jiyu's high aptitude, coupled with Origin Force, he estimated that he could probably do it in 1 or 2 years. The effect of Origin Force is truly remarkable. At this rate, I'll be able to cultivate the Barbaric Ox Fist to perfection very soon. However, based on what happened earlier, Origin Force mainly acts on my spirit, and once it improves, the benefits flow back into my body. That, in turn, requires other forms of energy to support physical enhancement. Otherwise, it leads to a depletion of blood qi. It's a good thing I only used 1 unit of Origin Force earlier. I might have turned back into skin and bones by now, muttered Lin Jiyu. Feeling the weakness in his body, Lin Jiyu was suddenly struck by lingering fear. He decided to boil both batches of herbs he had already prepared 3 more times to fully extract their medicinal power. After drinking the decoction, Lin Jiyu fell into a deep sleep. His spirit had already been utterly drained after pushing past his limits, so having used Origin Force to enter that special state earlier taxed his spirit even further. Morning soon came. It was still dark outside, but the rooster's raspy-voiced crowing had already begun, waking the bleary-eyed Lin Jiyu. This rooster is so annoying. Just let me catch you, and I'll have you slaughtered, muttered Lin Jiyu in a soft voice. He covered his ears with his pillow and went back to sleep. After drinking 2 batches of medicine, he had recovered quite a bit, but still felt overwhelmingly weak. His whole body was limp and completely lacking strength. The overflowing fragrance tea house. Compared to a month ago, the tea house's business had dwindled significantly. All the customers had been snatched away by the Jade Pill Tea House on Byway Street. Jia Yinming was seated at a window-side table with a burly young man sitting across from him. "Bro, who's the target this time?" asked the young man, mouth full as he bit into a lamb leg. He was Jia Yinming's younger brother, Jia Yinyong. Jia Yinyong stood at 1.9 meters tall, with a burly frame and bulging muscles. He was dressed in a tank top with his body covered in terrifying scars of all sizes. A scholar. It's that new storyteller at the Jade Pill Tea House, named Lin Jiyu. He tells stories there every afternoon. Find a chance to teach him a lesson for me, would you? But go easy on him. Don't cripple him. Just give him a scare, said Jia Yinming. This is so troublesome. I'm worried I won't be able to control my strength, replied Jia Yinyong in a soft tone. Scholars were all frail and delicate. He was afraid one punch might break the man's bones. Be careful and don't cripple him, I said. If you think that's too hard, let a few of your usual followers handle it. This guy is smart, and his storytelling is captivating. If he joins us, the business at the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House will definitely reach new heights. Jia Yinming reminded him carefully, worried his brother wouldn't hold back enough. Yeah, I got it. I've got some stuff to handle for the gang right now, but once I'm done, I'll go give that storyteller, Lin Jiu, or whatever, a good beating, proclaimed Jia Yinyong as he grabbed the lamb leg on the table and tore into it. When Lin Jiu woke up again, the sun was already high in the sky. He pushed open the window, letting the sunlight pour in and warm the room. Winter had arrived, and the people on the street were all dressed in long sleeves and trousers. My head's still a bit dizzy, and my body feels limp. Those 2 decoctions weren't enough to replenish the blood chi depleted by my breakthrough. I seriously need to get some money and restore my body, Jiu muttered with a frown. His condition had become terribly poor. He changed into a fresh green robe and headed straight to the Jade Pill Tea House. Wu Yinghe was a little surprised to see Lin Jiu. Normally, he only showed up shortly before his afternoon storytelling. Mr. Lin, what's wrong? You don't look well at all, said Manager Wu. I overdid my martial training last night, replied Lin Jiu. Manager Wu frowned and said, I may not know martial arts, but even I know things must be done with moderation. You mustn't rush things and injure yourself before the martial techniques are even mastered. Yeah, I know. It won't happen again next time. Lin Jiu nodded and got to the point of his visit, saying, Manager Wu, do you have any money on you? Lend me some. My body is too weak, so I need to buy some medicine. You really do look like you need it. Manager Wu nodded and asked, How much do you need? Lend me 5 taels of silver for now. You can deduct it from my daily storytelling wages, said Lin Jiu. He would have borrowed more, but unfortunately, Manager Wu was just an ordinary worker. Asking for too much would only put him in a difficult spot. 5 taels of silver, right? No problem. Come by this afternoon and I'll have it ready for you, said the manager without hesitation. He wasn't worried about Lin Jiu defaulting on the loan. With Lin Jiu's abilities, he would earn back 5 taels of silver in no time. After all, just his daily wage alone was 301. Wang Qing, bring me a pen and paper. I'll write Manager Wu an IOU, Lin Jiu said as he called out to the nearby waiter. No need for all that. I trust you regardless, replied Manager Wu. Come on, I'm treating you to a feast. You look terrible. I'll get you something really nourishing, said Manager Wu warmly. The 2 of them headed to Qingsu Tower. Wu Yinghe ordered a large table full of meat dishes, and Lin Jiu huffed it all and heartily without hesitation. Perhaps due to his body's extreme energy deficiency, his digestion was unusually fast. It hadn't even been 2 hours since breakfast, yet he was already hungry again. Jia Yinming came to see me again last night, but I turned him down. Afterwards, he had a rather cold look in his eyes. Do you know much about Jia Yinming? Do you think he'd resort to dirty tricks? Asked Lin Jiu. Jia Yinming came across as sharp and capable, exuding the aura of a driven businessman. He was the kind who would do anything to get what he wanted. Then you'd better be careful. Jia Yinming is ruthless and vicious in his methods. Did you know? There was a manager of the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House before him. I heard he used underhanded tactics to take the position. He'll definitely stop at nothing to get his way. If he has his eyes on you, that's bad news. Manager Wu said with concern as he frowned slightly. He's really that ruthless? Does he have any backing? Asked Lin Jiu in a serious tone. Manager Wu thought for a moment before speaking. Jia Yinming has a younger brother who is 3 years younger than him. His name is Jia Yinyong. From what I know, Jia Yinyong has been training in martial arts since he was young. He's got some skill and does fairly well in the Fei Hong, one gang. I suspect that it was Jia Yinming who had his brother take out the previous manager of the Overflowing Fragrance Tea House. But doesn't the city enforce the rules strictly and forbid fighting? How can those 2 brothers act like this and not get in trouble with the authorities? Asked Lin Jiu. As long as they don't start a fight in public, don't kill anyone, and the victim's relatives don't go to the authorities to raise a fuss, the government won't interfere, said Manager Wu with a bitter smile. The world was just that cruel. Then, didn't the former manager's family members raise a fuss? Asked Lin Jiu curiously. In this world, families and relatives always supported one another. There was no way they would let something like that slide, right? Jia Yinming stepped in, and offered some silver as compensation. Coupled with that compensation, Jia Yinyong's intimidation, and the Fei Hong gang backing them up, they managed to shut the angry family members up, said Manager Wu. This world was cruel beneath its veil of peace, was a brutal law of the jungle. I see. A sense of caution rose in Lin Jiyu's heart. He asked again, do you know how strong Jia Yinyong is? Lin Jiyu had only just started training seriously in martial arts. Before this, he had only practiced stance technique. His strength was limited, so he was worried that he couldn't win a fight. That, I'm not too sure about, but I have seen him. He's huge, at least 1.9 meters tall, and even more muscular than me. He looked extremely fierce and was covered in scars. I'd guess he's killed before, said Manager Wu with a grave tone. Lin Jiyu frowned slightly upon hearing his words. Living in such a backward society was truly troublesome. The lack of a sound system made things especially harsh for someone like him, who was alone and trying to make his way in the world. Why don't you come live at my place? Our Wu family has many strong men, and the Wu family village is very united. They wouldn't dare make a move there. You're all alone here in Songyi City, with no relatives to back you up. That just makes it easier for them to act without restraint, Manager Wu advised. No need. If it really comes to that, though, I'll come stay at your place, replied Lin Jiyu, shaking his head. He wasn't used to staying in someone else's home. If things got too difficult, he could just join the overflowing fragrance tea house. Wasn't that what Jia Yinming wanted all along? At that point, he could just write a few good stories, get Manager Wu to hire storytellers, and collect royalties. It'd even generate income. That might actually work, thought Lin Jiyu. The more he thought about it, the more he felt this idea had promise. After 2 hours of storytelling, Lin Jiyu once again received thunderous applause. Many young masters were present today, and they tipped generously, leaving Lin Jiyu feeling thoroughly delighted. Why is the main character still a scholar? I'm getting sick of it, Liang Song grumbled, tossing a peanut into his mouth. Ever since Lin Jiyu started telling stories at the Jade Pill Tea House, he had been performing tales from the strange tales from a Chinese studio. Almost all the stories featured forbidden romances between scholars and flower yaos or seductive fox yaos. Though captivating, Liang Song, being a martial artist, was getting tired of them. Why must such good stories be mixed with the dull love affairs of scholars? They're truly frustrating to listen to, thought Liang Song. Once this story is finished, I'll switch to a story about martial artists and the martial world, Lin Jiyu replied with a smile, attempting to appease his master. Yes, that's what I want to hear. I'm sick of hearing about scholars and those flower or fox yao's love stories every day, Liang Song exclaimed with his eyes lighting up. And yet you still show up every day, seemingly enjoying these stories. Lin Jiyu grumbled inwardly, but didn't dare say aloud. After all, this master was still his #1 supporter. Master, can I ask you something? Do you know about the Fei Hong gang? Asked Lin Jiyu. The Fei Hong gang? They're one of the 3 major gangs in Songyi City. I've seen their leader once. He has decent strength, but he's nothing special. What? Did someone from the Fei Hong gang set their sights on you? Asked Liang Song, shooting Lin Jiyu a sideways glance. Not really. It's just that the manager from the overflowing fragrance tea house tried to recruit me to tell stories there, but I turned him down. I've heard that the manager is ruthless. He often sends his younger brother, Jia Yinyong, to carry out dirty work in secret, and that very Jia Yinyong is part of the Fei Hong gang, replied Lin Jiyu. It's fine. In the city, they won't dare go too far. At most, you'll get beaten up, but they won't dare to kill you. If something really happens by accident, I'll report it to the authorities for you, said Liang Song with a squinting smile. Lin Jiyu was speechless by his words and thought to himself, if reporting to the authorities actually worked, why would anyone bother learning martial arts? Yeah, I'm not too worried. I just wanted to get a better idea of the situation. If worst comes to worst, I'll just accept Jia Yiming's offer. But if that happens, master, I'll have to trouble you to change venues to hear my stories, Lin Jiyu joked as he offered his master a toast. As the two chatted, the conversation returned to the barbaric ox fist. Lin Jiyu had already reached initiation in the barbaric ox fist, so he had many new questions about his cultivation. As they exchanged questions and answers, Liang Song's eyes grew increasingly bright as he looked at Lin Jiyu. This disciple he had casually taken in actually possessed extremely high comprehension. He had only started learning the barbaric ox fist yesterday, yet he had already grasped it to such a deep level. This kid's comprehension is just like mine. Liang Song couldn't help but feel impressed. He gave Lin Jiu a once-over, frowning slightly. Judging by your complexion, your blood qi are severely depleted. You've been overtraining. You need to balance work and rest. Training harder doesn't always mean faster improvement. If you want your body to grow stronger, blindly grinding isn't the way. You have to give your body enough time to recover. Otherwise, you'll end up with hidden injuries. While you're young, you might be able to suppress them, but when you get older, many martial artists from poor backgrounds only know how to train desperately. They gain strength, but they also accumulate injuries all over their bodies. While they're young, it's fine, but by their 30s, they start to decline, and in their 40s, they often die from injuries they can no longer suppress, said Liang Song, giving a warning to Lin Jiu. I'll keep that in mind, replied Lin Jiu with a nod. He had borrowed 5 taels of silver from manager Wu, and with a few doses of medicinal decoctions, his body would recover quickly. After that, his strength would advance significantly. Although the origin force transformation had left his blood qi depleted, it also laid a solid foundation for his body. As long as he kept up his nutrition and took a few more doses of medicinal decoctions, he'd soon recover completely. On the way back home, Lin Jiu spent all 5 taels of silver on qi tonifying and blood-nourishing herbs. Passing through the market, he bought a kilogram of pork as well, and only then did he return home satisfied. My body's not in great shape right now. If I train, I'll hit my physical limit quickly. I wonder if I'll be able to get any origin force? Lin Jiu pondered and decided to test it out. After eating and resting for a bit, he started working out hard in the courtyard. Half an hour later, it hurts like hell. I knew it wouldn't work, muttered Lin Jiu as he lay on the ground, unwilling to move an inch. Even after pushing himself to the limit and gritting his teeth for a few extra minutes like before, he still didn't gain any origin force points. Looks like it only works if I train to the limit while in peak physical condition. Resting for a few hours in between training and then pushing myself to the limit again seems to work, too. That's what happened last time at least, Lin Jiu said in a soft voice. After several attempts, Lin Jiu was starting to understand his cheat code better. He suspected that origin force was a strange energy born when one broke through their physical limit, causing their essence, qi, and spirit to merge and ascend in unison. Whenever his body hit its limit, Lin Jiu's essence, qi, and spirit would momentarily transcend, entering a mysterious state. In that state, his essence, qi, and spirit felt tightly fused together, forming a single strand that gave birth to a strange energy. Origin force might be directly related to this highly concentrated essence, qi, and spirit energy. Just now, he had pushed himself to the limit while in a weakened state, but he didn't gain any origin force. Lin Jiu guessed that it was because his body was too weak and the energy formed from his essence, qi, and spirit wasn't strong enough. Time slowly passed. Lin Jiu continued to practice the barbaric ox fist for 2 to 3 hours each day along with consuming large amounts of meat. After his origin force increased, he found that his body had a solid foundation. As long as he had enough nutrients, he would recover and grow stronger at an astonishing rate. In just 3 days, all 5 doses of medicinal decoction were gone, his depleted blood qi fully replenished. His body toughened, muscles taut and brimming with power. During that time, he stayed on edge, wary of Jia Yinyong's arrival. He kept chili powder on him at all times and set traps throughout his home. Yet days slipped by, and still, his opponent never appeared. The overflowing fragrance tea house. "Brother, I'm back," Jia Yinyong called out toward the inner hall of the tea house before sitting down on a chair. Unlike last time, he had a strong stench of blood, and a fresh cut on his neck was wrapped in gauze. "Is your injury all right?" Jia Yinming stepped out from the inner hall and immediately noticed the wound on his younger brother's neck, frowning as he asked. "It's nothing. It's just a small wound that'll be fine in a few days," replied Jia Yinyong nonchalantly. "Be more careful when you fight next time. Stop always rushing in first. Your life is your own, but the money belongs to someone else. Why fight so hard for it?" said Jia Yinming. "Brother, you don't understand. Those guys are like family to me. I can't just stand by and watch them get hacked to death," said Jia Yinyong. shaking his head. In the underworld, loyalty came first. One had to always be willing to take a blade for a brother. Foolish. They're just fair-weather friends. There are no real brothers in gangs. I'm your only real brother, said Jia Yinming, rebuking him. As a businessman, he had seen all kinds of darkness and scoffed at the so-called brotherhood Jia Yinyong spoke of. Brother, you don't have to worry about my business. Didn't you ask me to teach that what's his name again? Oh right, Lin Jiyu. I'm free now. Give me 2 days to recover, and I'll beat him up for you the day after tomorrow. Don't worry, I'll go easy on him, Jia Yinyong said as he chuckled. The Jade Pill Tea House. Lin Jiyu finally agreed to tell Liang Song a story about a martial artist. It was a troubled time. Wars raged across the land. A dynasty called Song stood amid a circle of wolves. This was Master Jin's legend of the Condor Heroes, 1, a tale of grand chivalry and of heroes who fought for the people and the nation. Through his time observing Liang Song, Lin Jiyu discovered that despite his rough and unruly appearance, the man had a righteous heart. He admired Yin Qixia's free-spirited righteousness, who traveled the world to slay yaos and demons, and also appreciated Zhuo Qianhu's uprightness and moral integrity. Telling this story was far more troublesome than strange tales from a Chinese studio, whose dynastic setting was vague and lacked presence. Legend of the Condor Heroes was different. The historical setting was crucial. Lin Jiyu revised and adapted the story, doing a basic historical reskin to make it more flexible. The mighty Qiantang River flowed endlessly, day and night, past Niu family village near Linen, and rolled eastward into the sea. Along the riverside stood dozens of. And so, after being rescued by a mysterious man calling himself Yen Lai, Bao Shihua tried to commit suicide out of grief, but was gently persuaded otherwise by Yen Lai. Coaxed by Yen Lai's fine clothes and tempting food, she muddle-headedly followed his arrangements and left Linen with him. Lin Jiyu stood atop the storyteller's platform, speaking with ease and confidence. The story was long, but as he continued, its layers began to unfold. At first, the patrons were quite displeased as this wasn't the usual tales of scholars and romantic flings. This wouldn't do, they thought to themselves. They had come precisely for those scholar meets beauty stories. Yet as they listened on, they gradually became engrossed. Outrageous. How could Bao Shihua go with that man? Truly shameless, unfaithful, and utterly. Someone slammed the table in anger and cursed aloud. It was a scholar, his face flushed red as he listened. Don't make a fuss. Quiet down and let Mr. Lin continue the story, someone else said. Hearing the chatter below, Lin Jiyu smiled faintly and clapped the table smartly. He said, "To know what happens next, tune in for the next installment." What? It ends here. No way, keep going. What happens next? You can't just stop halfway. Mr. Lin, please go on. Seeing the crowd getting worked up, Lin Jiyu quickly slipped away. No kidding, this wasn't like writing novels in his past life. If you had cut off a chapter in a novel, at most, you would have just gotten cursed as a cliffhanger dog. But if you had cut a live storytelling short, the riled-up crowd might have just hauled you back up to finish it. It was something Lin Jiyu had already experienced firsthand. That opening was well told. Very exciting, Liang Song commented. Lin Jiyu smiled and replied, "Glad you enjoyed it." After chatting with Liang Song for a bit and asking some questions about martial cultivation, he took his leave. Once outside, he walked over 200 meters along Byway Street, then turned into a restaurant. He had arranged to meet someone here. Lin Jiyu scanned the place and took a seat at one of the tables. "Gentlemen, have you made your decision?" asked Lin Jiyu as he looked at the 3 aging scholars before him. They wore long robes of faded blue, their faces weathered and lined with age, beards untrimmed. Their robes were worn pale from washing, with small tears here and there. It was clear they were living in straitened circumstances. These were the storytellers Lin Jiyu had found over the past few days. They were men with no real connections and were barely scraping by in Songi City. "Can you guarantee the story will be as exciting as the one you told at the Jade Pill Tea House?" asked the man on the left. "The style's different, so it's hard to say which will be better, but it's definitely fresher and more exciting than the stale, old stories you've been telling," replied Lin Jiyu. There was fierce competition in storytelling. Many scholars who had failed the imperial exams or couldn't make a living had turned to it as a last resort. If the stories were outdated, The delivery was weak, and the emotion was unconvincing. Such storytellers couldn't draw in a crowd, no matter what. The three storytellers Lin Jiyu had found had decent skills and passable emotional delivery, but their stories were outdated and lacked originality. This world was severely lacking in good stories. Or rather, good stories did exist, but due to the slow spread of written information, they only circulated within small, localized regions. In Songi City, the popular tales had been heard so many times that people were numb to them. That was why Lin Jiyu was able to rise to popularity so quickly. Could we take a look at the content first before making a decision? Another man asked. Of course, replied Lin Jiyu. Lin Jiyu pulled several densely written sheets of paper from his robe and handed each of them a copy. Each of the papers contained the same content. You can review it first. If you use my script for storytelling, each episode is priced at 81. We'll sign a contract if you agree, said Lin Jiyu. This was the money-making method he had come up with earlier to collaborate with storytellers. But stories in this era had no concept of copyright. Once told and heard, they could easily be taken and claimed by someone else. Because of this, it was difficult for Lin Jiyu to sell his stories at a high price. A storyteller of average skill earned about 70 won a day, and with tips, could make around 101. Basing his price on this, Lin Jiyu set his episodes at 81. After all, a great story often earned more in rewards than in wages. This happened near Brick Pagoda Alley, south of the West Four Archways. Two brothers lived there, both surnamed Ta. The older was Tada, the younger Ta heir. The younger one worked at the commandant's office, and the elder was a cook. This was a classic story from his past life, the nine-headed mystery. The three men began reading the pages, their eyes lighting up more and more as they read. Good. Wonderful. The three storytellers could not help but applaud when they reached the end of the story Lin Jiyu had shared with them. All right. I, Fu Jingyun, agree, said the man on the left. I, Jing Haifeng as well. And me, Guan Yihan. The three spoke in turn. With their years of storytelling experience, they were certain this story would be a hit and bring in plenty of rewards from the audience. The story was eye-catching, with each twist more thrilling than the last. It would definitely keep listeners on the edge of their seats. Although it was true that once the story spread, others could recite it as well. Being among the first storytellers to share it meant far more attention, more listeners, and much greater rewards. People did listen to old stories, but they were far less inclined to tip. Most already knew how such stories ended, so they listened just for amusement or to pass the time. New stories were a lot different. If the plot were gripping, listeners would tip to hear what happened next. Then welcome, gentlemen. You can also recommend other storytellers to come to me. For every successful referral, I will give you 31, said Lin Jiyu with a smile. Lin Jiyu accepted their coins with a smile on his face. With this, Lin Jiyu's daily income increased by 241, and if he got even more subordinates, his earnings would be that much more gratifying. At a corner of Songi City, Mr. Lin has started a new narrative. It's a story about martial artists, and it's absolutely wonderful. A vulgar warrior's tale? What's so wonderful about that? Exactly. I still prefer stories about scholars, with all those charming fox yaos and romantic encounters. Just thinking about it is thrilling. A slightly sleazy-looking man chimed in and said, "What's the point of those? War and blood. Battles where every punch lands hard. Standing up for injustice with a roar. Cutting down foes when your heart burns with anger now. That's the kind of life a true man should live." Brother Zhou, what are they talking about? Who is this Mr. Lin? Asked a skinny fellow sitting nearby with a puzzled face. He had come from Baishan district to the inner city looking for work. They're talking about Mr. Lin from the Jade Pill Tea House. He's a newly emerged storyteller in Songi City whose tales are amazing. They're so good that you can hear people talking about them all over the streets and alleys these days. I really enjoy listening to him too, but I don't go often as I have to work to earn money, said Zhou Weiqing with a smile. A storyteller? Mr. Lin? The skinny fellow asked curiously. Brother Zhou, what's this Mr. Lin's full name? I think his name is Lin Jiyu. He's a young scholar, replied Zhou Weiqing. Lin Jiyu, exclaimed the skinny fellow as his eyes lit up. The sky was darkening as night fell. The setting sun sank beneath the horizon, leaving only faint streaks of slanting light. In Baishan district, a few local thugs lounged about at their usual spot. They were either sitting or lying down, gathered together to chat and brag idly. The skinny fellow arrived at the usual spot and said to Gao Yu with excitement, "Brother Yu, guess who I saw in the city today?" Bang! Gao Yu casually greeted him with a punch. "Screw you. Just talk, dumbass. I don't like riddles," Gao Yu said irritably. "Yes, yes, yes," replied the skinny fellow as he rubbed his head, grimacing in pain. Gao Yu's strength was too much one punch, and it hurt like hell. "Weren't you working as a porter in the city? What? Did you run into one of your old flames from the 100 Flowers Pavilion?" Another companion teased. "Are you giving me the money for that? It's been so long since I last went to the 100 Flowers Pavilion. Just thinking of that taste, that soft skin you could squeeze water from, and that silky smooth touch, it really makes a man obsessed," said the skinny fellow, narrowing his eyes in intoxicated reminiscence. The girls at the 100 Flowers Pavilion were far more delicate than the women in the villages, and their skills were varied and enticing. It was pure enjoyment to play with them. Bang! Gao Yu struck him with another punch, saying impatiently, "Are you going to spit it out or not? Stop teasing us." "Ow, ow, ow, brother, ease up. You're going to knock the sense out of me," said the skinny fellow. He grumbled, but seeing Gao Yu's sidelong glance, he quickly said, "I saw Lin Jiyu in the city." "Lin Jiyu? You mean that guy who used to avoid us whenever he saw us? Haven't seen him in ages. I thought he had died in some nameless corner," said a man with a stalk of wild grass between his teeth, smiling. In these times, death was common, especially for someone like Lin Jiyu. He was an outcast who had fled from another city and had no one to rely on. Walking down an empty street and getting thrown into a sack to be sold as a slave was a common occurrence. Fortunately, when Lin Jiyu first arrived in Songi City, he was as skinny as a bamboo pole. He looked malnourished, so no one thought he was worth the trouble. "Yes, that's him. Didn't that kid say before that he was going to be a storyteller in the city? I asked around, and it's true. But we were deceived. He's actually famous in Songi City now. People flock to hear his storytelling every day, and just from tips alone, they say he earns more than 200 won daily," said the skinny fellow in amazement. He hadn't expected that being a storyteller could make so much money. If it were someone else making money, he wouldn't have cared much, since he didn't know them. But the one raking in the money was the very down-and-out refugee scholar they used to look down on, and that made the skinny fellow burn with jealousy. "That much money?" exclaimed Gao Yu. "That 200 won was just from tips, not even counting his wages." Gao Yu toiled at hard labor every day for meager pay, yet that frail coward was earning this much. This was something he absolutely could not stomach. "Brother Yu, I secretly asked around and found out that Lin Jiyu is living alone now. He is renting a small courtyard in the inner city, in a pretty secluded spot at that. Should we go and hit him up for a score?" asked the skinny fellow with a sly, shifty look. How much could they make from honest work anyway? For these thugs, having a job was just a side gig. Petty theft and crime were their real trade. The inner city's strict about law enforcement. "If we get caught," said another companion hesitantly, "what's there to be afraid of? Worst case, we get locked up for a while." "It's not like I haven't been in before," replied the skinny fellow disdainfully. He was a regular in prison. Everyone inside was a talent in their own way, good with words and skilled in all sorts of rare trades. Many of his own tricks had been learned from the people there. Going in was like attending an advanced training course. "It's decided then. Tonight, we're going to take him for everything he's got, and we'll scare him while we're at it. That coward's all alone in Songi City, so no one will stand up for him." "What's there for us to be afraid of?" said Gao Yu with a grin on his face. After recruiting 3 storytellers, Lin Jiyu went home feeling satisfied. Once the team of storytellers grew larger, all he would have to do in the future was sit back and collect money. Heaven rewards the diligent. Name: Lin Jiyu. Origin Force: 2. Skills: Barbaric Ox Fist Initiation, 46%. A few days have passed, yet I've made no progress at all. After reaching initiation in a skill, it normally takes at least a year or 2 to advance it to competence. With normal training, it takes about 10 days just to raise it by 1%. "It's really slow," murmured Lin Jiyu as he looked at the data in his consciousness. After a few days, his depleted blood qi had been replenished, and his essence, qi, and spirit had been restored to their peak. It was time to push his limits again. Although he had no silver to buy supplements, and thus couldn't use origin force to enhance himself for now. It was never wrong to accumulate more origin force. Stripping off his shirt, Lin Jiu began practicing the barbaric ox fist in the courtyard. His fists pounded against the wooden stake with dull, thudding sounds. His muscles swelled with every punch as he unleashed the greatest power he could muster with each strike. Beneath his lean frame was hidden immense strength.